What if the reason you're not reaching your goals has nothing to do with your willpower, your discipline, or how hard you work? What if the problem is something much simpler and much more fixable than any of that? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear changed the way thousands of people think about ambition, failure, and what it actually means to move forward in life. And it all starts with a question most people never think to ask themselves. Why do you actually want what you want? Not the surface answer, not because I want to be successful or because I want to feel better. The real answer? The one underneath. Alfred Adler, one of the most important psychologists of the 20th century, spent his entire career asking that question, and what he found was quietly revolutionary. He believed that human beings are not driven by the past. They are pulled by the future, by the goals they've set for themselves, by the image they carry, often unconsciously, of who they want to become. That might sound simple, but it changes everything. Because if you are always moving toward, something always oriented toward a future version of yourself, then the real question is never, why am I stuck? The real question is, what am I actually moving toward without knowing it? Here's where it gets interesting. Adler noticed something that most people miss entirely. Many of the goals we think we have are not really our goals. They're defenses. They're ways of protecting ourselves from something we're afraid of. A person who says they want to write a novel but never starts, maybe their real unconscious goal is to remain someone who could write a novel. The potential is safe. The attempt is not. A person who says they want to change careers but keeps finding reasons to wait. Maybe their real goal is to avoid the vulnerability of being a beginner again. This is not a criticism. It's one of the most human things there is. And the moment you see it, everything shifts. Adler called this the fictional final goal, the image of success or safety or wholeness that we're all quietly running toward, whether we know it or not. And the work, he said, is not to punish yourself for having these hidden goals. It's to bring them into the light, to look at them honestly and ask, is this actually what I want? Or is this what fear wants for me? Take a moment to sit with that, because the answer, for most people, is uncomfortable in the best possible way. Now, here's something that might feel surprising, coming from a psychologist. Adler was not interested in inner work for its own sake. He was extraordinarily practical. He believed that insight without action is just another form of being stuck. He had a phrase for this. He called it, yes, but. You've heard it. You've maybe said it. Yes, I want to change, but I'm too tired. Yes, I know what I should do, but it never seems to work out. Yes, but. It's the most elegant way a person has ever invented to stay exactly where they are while feeling like they're doing something about it. Adler wasn't harsh about this. He understood it, but he was clear. At some point, the story we tell about why we can't do the thing becomes the very thing keeping us from doing it. So what's the alternative? It starts with something deceptively small. Adler believed deeply in what he called social interest, the idea that we are fundamentally relational creatures, and that our well-being is inseparable from our sense of contribution to something beyond ourselves. This is not about grand gestures. It's not about changing the world. It's about whether, in the small daily texture of your life, you feel like you matter to someone. Like what you do has some kind of ripple. And here's the quiet, almost counterintuitive insight. The people who move most reliably toward their goals are often not the ones most focused on themselves. They're the ones who've found a way to connect their personal goals to something larger. Not because they have to, but because it gives the goal a kind of gravity that pure self-interest rarely provides. Think about someone who wants to get healthier. The goal is purely aesthetic, to look a certain way. It's fragile. It depends on mood, on comparison, on a standard that keeps moving. But if the goal is rooted in something relational, to have energy for the people they love, to model something for their children, to be present in a way they haven't been, it becomes sturdier. It has more than one reason to exist. This is not a trick. It's just how meaning works. And this brings us to perhaps the most important idea Adler left us. He believed that courage, what he called the courage to be imperfect, is the single most important quality for a life well lived. Not talent, not intelligence, not the right circumstances. Courage, specifically, the courage to try something and do it badly, to show up without guarantees, to keep moving even when you're not sure you're doing it right. We live in a world that is deeply uncomfortable with imperfection, that rewards polish and punishes struggle. And so we learn, very early, that it is better to not try than to try and fail visibly. We learn to protect ourselves with preparation, with planning, with an endless refinement of the idea that never quite becomes the thing itself. Adler would say, this is the heart of the problem. Not laziness, not a lack of motivation. A fear that has been made so reasonable, so rational sounding, that we no longer even see it as fear. We call it being realistic. We call it waiting for the right moment. We call it being responsible. And he would say, gently but clearly, that moment is not coming. There is only this one. This is the part that stays with people, because it doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like relief. When you stop waiting for the version of yourself who will finally be ready, something opens up. You realize that the person who will write the book, start the business, have the conversation, make the change, they don't arrive first. They emerge through the doing. The action creates the person, not the other way around. That's not a motivational slogan. It's one of the most well-supported ideas in the history of psychology. We do not think our way into new ways of acting, okay? We act our way into new ways of thinking. So what does this look like in practice? It looks like doing the uncomfortable thing in the smallest possible form. Not running a marathon. Taking a 10-minute walk. Not writing a novel. Writing one paragraph. Not transforming your relationship. Having one honest conversation. Not becoming a different person. Being, just slightly, a more honest one today. Adler had enormous faith in this, in the accumulative power of small, genuine movement. He believed that if a person could consistently act even slightly more aligned with their real goals, their conscious, chosen goals, not the hidden defensive ones, the trajectory of their life would change, not overnight, not dramatically, but it would change. And there's something deeply calming about that. Something that takes the pressure off the single decision, the single moment, the need for everything to click into place at once. You are not building a life in one afternoon. You are building it in a long series of mornings, each one asking the same quiet question: what can I do today? However small, that moves me in the direction I actually want to go. There is a particular kind of person Adler noticed in his practice. Someone intelligent, thoughtful, often quite self-aware, who understood their patterns completely and still couldn't change them. Who could describe their problem with perfect clarity and still find themselves again and again in the same place. And his conclusion was not that they needed more insight. It was that they needed to stop rehearsing the understanding and start practicing something different. Because at some point, understanding becomes its own comfort, its own way of not having to change. This is the last thing, and maybe the most important. Adler believed in the possibility of change, genuine, meaningful change, more than almost any thinker of his era. He was not pessimistic about human nature. He did not believe that your early experiences determined your fate, or that your personality was fixed, or that some people were simply not built for the things they wanted. He believed that the style of life, the patterns, the habits, the unconscious goals could be seen, examined, and over time, reshaped. Not easily, not without discomfort, but fully and at any point in a life. That's the offer on the table. Not that you'll become someone unrecognizable, not that you'll suddenly stop being afraid or uncertain or human in all the ways you are, but that you can, quietly and consistently, become more aligned with the person you actually want to be. That the gap between who you are and who you're moving toward can narrow, not through force, but through honesty, through small, courageous acts, and through the willingness to keep going even when you're not entirely sure you're doing it right. That's the whole thing, really. That's the guide. And you already know, somewhere, that it's enough to start. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.